Okay, good evening, brothers and sisters, and welcome. Welcome. So, this is a special session that we're having today. And if you can hear me, just show your electronic hand. If you can hear me clearly, show your electronic hand so that I know that. Thank you very much. Okay. So, this is a special session. This session that we're holding for this week and next week. So, this week, today, Wednesday, and Thursday, and again next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, is a joint session for all new executives that have been either elected or appointed, including councillors and second-term AEMP participants. We're going to be focusing on new guidelines that the newly elected and appointed executives did not do previously because they were not yet approved, and guidelines that form a core component of AEMP. So just to repeat the announcements that were sent out 2 weeks ago to the platforms, there are some exercises that you're supposed to complete. When you complete them, you will submit them using the link that was provided. So the right link to use is the one that says General Guidelines. So that's the one that you use to submit your exercises.
Chichi, I
So
think they need to
today's session.
recording, please. Gabriel should record.
I think it's been recorded.
No.
Just starting now.
Okay. All right. Good evening once again. This is a special session for second-term AEMP participants, as well as an orientation for all of the newly elected or appointed 2026 executives and councillors in the Archdiocese of Lagos. We're having this joint session because the guidelines that we're going to be using were not approved in the first term. And so we are kind of killing two birds with one stone, if you will permit me to use that analogy. So the sessions are going to go on today, tomorrow being Wednesday, and on Thursday. And then next week again, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. In addition to the guidelines, we're also going to be taking participants through an orientation into a form of spirituality that will help you in building up your own spirituality, as well as in building up the spirituality of the people that you lead. So remember that leadership in the church is focused on evangelization and growth in holiness. I see a lot of hands up. I'm not sure what the hands are for, but if you can please put your comments in the chat, I'll take a look and find out exactly what you need right now. Okay, I don't see any comments. I just see people introducing themselves. Okay, so I'm going to continue. I assume that everybody is hearing me, so okay. All right. So you actually don't have to put your names because Zoom automatically records your names. You just need to rename your devices. Just make sure that your devices have your first name, last name, as well as your deanery. So that's all you need to do. So just make sure that you name your devices appropriately, and if you have a participant ID, you can also include the participant ID. Okay, so welcome again. For those people on YouTube, just to go through the protocol for YouTube before we begin. So those on YouTube, you'll be required to sign into a form. There's a form. This is the link for the form, and the link will also be posted on the YouTube chat. It was also posted on the platforms. So you sign in and put in your names, and whenever questions or exercises are asked to be conducted, you put in your responses there as well. So that's your own form of participation. So thank you very much as you do that. I'm just going to make sure that I'm able to access your records as well. So we shall now begin. Okay, so let's begin with prayer. So in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. So we pray along together. Heavenly Father, we, your children of the Catholic Archdiocese of Lagos, entrust ourselves and the Archdiocesan Engagement for Mission Program into your hands. Grant us your wisdom and discernment as we navigate the changes and challenges that lie ahead. Bless the work of our hands, that the AEMP may contribute to the well-being, growth, and salvation of all. May we, with the help of the Holy Spirit, contribute to this endeavor with integrity, creativity, and perseverance. Grant us your spirit of unity. Help us to recognize and put aside our selfish desires and work together in harmony towards the common goals of spiritual commitment and engagement. May our words be filled with love and respect, and our actions reflect your grace. Give us courage and strength to overcome any anxieties that keep us from accepting the changes needed in this program. Help us to move forward with peace in our hearts during and after this transition. When we're daunted by the pressures of the AEMP, help us to depend on your strength and increase our faith. We ask all this through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Our Lady, Seat of Wisdom, pray for us. Our Lady, Queen of Nigeria, pray for us. Our Lady, Queen of Peace, pray for us. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Okay. So we now begin. So the protocol is that if you are asked to respond to a question, you need to raise your hand. When you raise your hand, one of the co-hosts will unmute you so that you can speak. And afterwards, they will mute you again. The reason we're not allowing participants to unmute themselves is so that we can contain the noise level and so that we can maintain an enabling environment for people to learn. It's not that we don't want you to speak. When you need to speak, you just need to put up your hands. At the appropriate time, one of the admins will unmute and invite you to speak. So thank you very much for your understanding. So just as an introduction into the new guidelines and as an introduction into all of the guidelines that are associated with this program, it's all about governance. It's all about governance. We are all leaders, whether it is in our families, whether it is in our workplace, whether it is in the parish, in the lay organizations we belong to, in civil organizations that we belong to. Every single person is a leader in one place or the other. And so we're all called to govern and to contribute to governance in one way or the other. Even as citizens of Nigeria, we are asked and required to contribute to the governance of our country. And there are three core principles of governance, and we need to know them so that we can hold people accountable, so that we can hold ourselves accountable and hold other people accountable as well. So the first principle is that of accountability. So it's very important that those who lead and who are decision makers, they have the responsibility of explaining and justifying their actions to stakeholders. It's very irresponsible for anybody to be in a position of leadership and think that because they are leaders, that they don't have to explain what they are doing to other people. Okay, so if we have been inundated by bad example, it doesn't make it right. You know, our role in the church is to know the right thing to do and to make sure that we promote the right thing. So accountability is also about being answerable for the decisions and the outcomes. That's the result. So if you're leading an organization, you are responsible both for the decisions you make and for the results of the organization. Okay? And it's your responsibility to prevent the abuse of power and to ensure that you are serving the public and not yourself. Very, very important. And then when it comes to transparency is about openness in the processes that you use, the policies that you make, and making sure that you report financial activities and outcomes as well. Okay, and it's also about providing accurate and timely information, because this is what builds trust, and it also allows stakeholders to understand the decisions that you're making. Okay, and then lastly is that of fairness and responsibility. So treating all the stakeholders, every single human person as a leader has stakeholders, and we have a responsibility to treat the stakeholders with equity and to protect their rights. Okay, so the responsibility demands that the executive board or the executive leaders or the executives accept authority and manage risk, both for the long-term success of the organization, not just for the short-term gain. Okay, and when it comes to church organizations, we always have to remember that the long-term success of any Catholic organization is that people are growing in holiness and that the organization is effective in evangelization, no matter what it is that we're doing. No matter what it is that is the mission of that group. The people we serve, our members, must be growing in holiness, and the organization must be growing in its effectiveness to evangelize both to its members and to the other stakeholders. Okay, so every other thing is short-term. Every other goal is short-term. So there are certain other principles that are also important, so such as independence, avoiding conflicts of interest. And what do we mean by conflict of interest? So a situation, for example, where you are an executive and it is your company that, or a company of somebody that you have brought that is executing a contract for that group. So that is a conflict of interest situation. Okay, so we're supposed to avoid such things. Okay, and then participation, ensuring that we hear diverse voices in our decision making. Okay, having town hall meetings, making sure that you're listening to everybody. It doesn't mean that you do what people say, but that you listen, and you listen attentively to understand what their needs and their desires are. But making sure that in your decision making, you do not deviate from the teachings of the church simply because that is what people are asking you to do. That's not what you're called to do. Okay, and then ensuring the rule of law. Okay, adhering to laws and regulations, very, very important. Adhering to Catholic teachings, adhering to all the guidelines that have been issued by the church, and also your constitution, the constitution of your group, and the bylaws of your group. Okay, very, very important, as well as the laws of the country that we are in. Okay, very important. Okay, so when it comes to Catholic governance, there are 8 principles that are fundamental. They are the core of Catholic governance principles. We've talked about them before, but they are worth being reminded. So human dignity, recognizing the sacredness and inherent worth of every person. And the most important part of this is fostering their authentic development. There are many things that we do that are, without our intending and without our knowing it, we are fostering authentic development of the people that are our members and that we serve. But what our responsibility is to ensure that we're fostering authentic human development. And then the second principle is that of the common good, which states that governance must promote conditions for all people to flourish, focusing on societal well-being over individual or group interests. So again, talking about flourishing is talking about authentic human development. Okay, and then the principle of subsidiarity, extremely important, that decisions should be made at the lowest effective level, empowering local communities with higher authorities and only stepping in, okay, with higher authorities only stepping in when it is necessary. And this is the principle behind the guideline, for example, that you do not need higher level bodies conducting elections for groups, because these groups are made up of people who are adults, who are capable of running their affairs by themselves. So it's only when there's a problem that a higher body comes in to resolve that problem and then steps out again. Okay? And so this is extremely important. So we need to be thinking carefully about the things that we're doing. And then solidarity, a call for unity and mutual responsibility, okay, which is why collaboration is so important, okay? Emphasizing that we are one human family, one Catholic family, okay? Whether it is leading formation, whether it's laity council, whether it's a lay organization, whatever it is, we are one Catholic family, working together towards the same goal, okay? Collaboratively, not competitively. Very, very important, okay? But also noticing those people who need support and making sure that we take care of them. So, for example, one of the interesting things that came up in the past few months is we will hear complaints like, in our parish, many of our members are illiterate. Okay, so we shouldn't be hearing that again in the next 4 years, because those who are educated should make sure that those who are illiterate are literate. Okay, because illiteracy makes people to be vulnerable. They are vulnerable to all sorts of manipulations and all sorts of things. So authentic human development requires that we do something about those kinds of things. Or we hear that people are not computer literate. The world we're living in now is a digital world. So if we have parishioners who are not computer literate, as a priority, those who are computer literate should do something about it and make sure that 4 years from now, we shouldn't be hearing things like that anymore. Okay, that is what solidarity is all about. In the same way, you shouldn't belong to a parish where some people are dying of hunger, when there are people who can help them out, or that there are parishioners who are unemployed, when there are people that can help them to be employed. Okay, so this is what solidarity is all about, and this is what our parishes should be about. Okay, we shouldn't be about complaining. We should be about finding out what people need and solving them. Okay, forming little groups here and there to meet the real and actual needs of the parish. That's what engagement is all about, solidarity. Okay, and then the preferential option for the poor, prioritizing the needs of the poor and the marginalized in decision making and resource allocation. And I'll just speak a little bit on that, because one of the other things that we heard in the past few months was people thinking that when there is that because there's a requirement that everybody does AEMP and certain people are illiterate, that it means that the poor and the illiterate were being marginalized. So that is not marginalization. Okay, that is not marginalization. What it is that when it comes to service, and I think the other related thing that we heard was people equating service with leadership. That doesn't mean that the poor are not supposed to serve the church or that the illiterates are not supposed to serve the church. No, there's a difference between service and leadership. And for those who have done the AEMP program, you would have noticed that it is God who gives these gifts. Some people are given leadership for a purpose. Some people are given serving for a purpose, okay? So every single member of the parish can have something, a way to serve in the parish, because there are so many needs. There are so many needs, okay? So based on abilities, based on talents and competencies, every single person can serve, but only a few are called to lead. Because you only need a few people to lead. You don't need a multitude to lead. Okay? And leadership is about authentic human development, bringing people up. So the poor, helping them to come up by providing vocations and employment. Okay? The illiterate, helping them to be literate. Okay? That's what leadership is about, bringing people up, helping people to develop their spirituality and things like that. So you can't give what you do not have. Okay, so preferential option for the poor is prioritizing the needs. If the need is education, we prioritize education. If the need is employment, we prioritize employment. Okay. If the need is shelter, we prioritize shelter. That is what preferential option for the poor means. Okay. So stewardship, responsible management of God's creation and resources, ensuring actions benefit future generations and the planet. Okay. So that is care for the creation on one side is what stewardship is about. On the other side is also those resources that we have as parishes and as groups in the church, that we are responsible managers, and that as leaders, we are responsible managers of even the human resources that we have in our care. Okay. How we manage time, how we manage the talents, that's part of responsible stewardship. Okay. It will be irresponsible stewardship for me to take somebody who does not have the ability to function in a role and give responsibilities to that person. That is irresponsible stewardship. Responsible stewardship is that I make sure that competent people with the right spiritual gifts and the right talents and the right abilities are given commensurate responsibilities. That is part of responsible management of God's creation and resources, because every single one of us is God's resources and we're not to waste them. Okay. And then participation, encouraging active involvement of all members in decisions affecting their lives and the community. And people cannot be responsible participants if they are not knowledgeable about what is happening. So before you can contribute to a decision, you first need to understand it. Okay, and we saw that happening again in the past few months with the AEMP, where people that had absolutely no clue about the program were making suggestions about what we should do and what we shouldn't do. Okay, that is not responsible participation. Okay, but we also had a group of very responsible participation from the Association of Papa Knights and Medalists. The group engaged with the program, and through their engagement, because they took part in it, they were able to offer constructive feedback. And so that a lot of their constructive feedback was taken because they engaged in it, and through that engagement, they understood it, and in understanding it, they were able to give constructive feedback. Okay, so it's very important that we get as many people as possible to engage participate, complete the program. After you've completed it, then you will be in a position to give constructive feedback. We had a participant, after the participant finished, the participant sent us some ideas about what she felt we could do differently. Very constructive participation. Okay, so we encourage active involvement of all our members in parish programs, in lay organizations, and in all the things that are happening in the archdiocese. And then truth, justice, and love. These are essential values guiding leaders and policies towards truly human and moral society. There can be no authentic human development without truth, justice, and love. Okay. All right. So, why are we taking time to lay this background? The reason we're taking the time to lay this background is because we need to understand that when it comes to the guidelines, when it comes to what is happening in the world and around us, it cannot be separated from the things that are happening in our personal lives. Nigeria is what it is today because of the sum of the collective sins of every single one of us, myself included. We have all contributed to where we are today. And until we recognize that, we're not going to be able to solve the problem. It's very easy for us to sit where we are and be pointing fingers at the leaders. So, our Catholic faith emphasizes the point that it is our personal sins that quickly take on a social dimension. Okay. So, the decisions that leaders or citizens make, if we're prioritizing our self-interest, if we are involved in corrupt practices, if we're involved in tribalism, and all other kinds of injustices and immoral practices, very soon they become institutionalized. And all the evils in our society right now is the sum total of all the ones we have been doing in the past. They now became part and parcel. In fact, what I notice happens these days is that when you tell somebody, oh, why are you doing something like this? They say, yeah, but that is how we do things in Nigeria. So even the things that are bad are being explained by that is how we do things in Nigeria. And how is it that they have become how we do things in Nigeria? Because we've been doing them for such a long time. They became habits, they became the norm, they became practices, and then the corrupted consciences of every single one of us now became those who will make policies, who will make laws that are also sinful and not okay. That is how social sins, and that is how institutionalization happens. It happens from the individual sins each one of us commits. So we all have a role. We have all added to the problems in the same way that we carried these same problems into the church. So we have all contributed to the problems both inside and outside of the church. And because when these things become institutionalized, then what happens is that even our behaviors become flawed. And I will give myself as an example. Many years ago, I was a medical sales rep. I was employed into a company where the medical sales reps were already entrenched in a system. And I got in as a novice, fresh graduate, got in there, and I just flowed in with this system. I didn't even give it a thought. And this system was a system of where we would take our products from distributors, mark them up, and sell them to hospitals at higher prices. Because that was what I met, I just did exactly what every other person did. It took my doing my MBA program in a school that was concerned about ethics for it to be brought to my attention that, is this really ethical? Before then, I had never given it a thought. And that is how things happen. There are many things in our society that every single one of us just does because that's what we met. We were born into it. We inherited it. We don't even think about it. We just move with it. And in the process, we are perpetuating sin and harm. Okay. So we have to recognize that when we deviate from the governance principles, especially the Catholic governance principles that I spoke about earlier, that those deviations in themselves are sins against the Catholic social teaching principles. We violate human dignity when we use fear, oppression, or discrimination. When we reject the common good, that is, we take decisions that foster our personal interest or the interest of a small group of people over what is good for everybody. And in the church, the only thing that is good for everybody is growth in holiness. So if you're taking a decision that is not fostering growth in holiness and in some way even harms that growth in holiness for the members, for yourself, and for other people, it's a sin. But we never really think about these things as sins. When we abandon the needs of the vulnerable, in any the needs of the poor, the needs of the uneducated, the needs of those who are ill and things like that, when we abandon them for grandiose projects to build this, to build that, when there are poor people, unemployed people in the parishes, when we abandon all of that for fancy things that are all over the place, we are committing sins, governance sins, without thinking about it, because that is what we inherited. When I become an ESCO, my project must be the biggest project. Or they must know me that this is what I did. We leave the needs of the poor and the vulnerable. And poverty is not just about material poverty. There is spiritual poverty as well. We neglect all of those things for things that do not matter when it comes to our eternal good. We are committing sin. When we abuse the principles of subsidiarity and solidarity, when we refuse to collaborate with people that we should collaborate with in order to push the kingdom of God forward, we are committing sin. When at diocesan and deanery level organizations oppress the people at the parish level and do not give them room to express and do what they are supposed to do, we are abusing subsidiarity and solidarity, and we are committing sin. So what we need to remember is that the apostolate of the laity is to share in the church's saving mission by infusing the secular world, that is the world where we are all living in, with the spirit of the gospel. Unfortunately, what has happened now is that when it comes to governance, we have infused the church with the spirit of the secular world. That's actually the situation on hand. And it is the vision of the Archbishop through the AEMP for us to go back and infuse the church with the spirit of the gospel, particularly taking into consideration the principles of the Catholic social teachings on governance and how things should be done, so that the church can foster authentic human development, and so that the church can become a place where its members flourish, so that when these members are flourishing, the laity can indeed become what they are supposed to be. That is, people who go out into the world, who go out into the workplace, in their families, in civil society, to infuse the world with the Spirit of Christ. If we live up to that mission, Nigeria will be a better place. So it's very important, therefore, that as we move forward, so if I might see you putting up your hand, you can just put in your comments in the chat, and one of the co-hosts can check if it's something urgent I need to pay attention to. One of the co-hosts will let me know. Okay. All right. So it's very important that moving forward, as executives that have been newly elected and as participants of AEMP, that we need to carefully scrutinize everything that we are doing to ensure that we remove all traces of anti-gospel spirit. And anything anti-gospel is a sin. Okay? From the church's governance structures, including that of lay organizations, in the way we run our organizations. Subsidiarity, solidarity, okay, human dignity, common good, focus on evangelization, focus on what your group is for. These are all governance principles. Okay. So governance principles that deviate from the Catholic social teaching are viewed as expressions of social sin and structures of sin, which they originate from the personal sins of the people who are running those groups. And what is usually motivating these things? Knowingly and unknowingly. Greed, pride, thirst for power. And over the years, all of these things became institutionalized. And a lot of harm is being done to the dignity of the human persons, including the people who are the perpetrators of these actions. And also, consequently, rejecting the common good. So we all need to rethink. We need to rethink our practices. So the AEMP guidelines, including the new ones that you'll be introduced to today, they all target this social sin and structures of sin. That is what they are geared at. But we know that it is not enough to have guidelines. Because as we have seen, the real battle is in each one of us, is in the human beings. Guidelines will not solve the problems. The only thing guideline will do for you is to tell you what the right thing is. It is left to the individual to fight the sins that we all have in our hearts. And that is the reason why this program is not just focusing on introducing the guidelines. We are also focusing on the heart. We're focusing on the heart because we recognize that the guidelines can create or help in cultivating the right environment for people to grow in holiness and for engagement to happen. But if the human beings that have been entrusted with governing these groups, if they're also not cultivating their hearts, we will not achieve much. And ultimately, what God is desiring is not guidelines. God is desiring our hearts. Okay? God is not desiring blind followership. God just desires our hearts. And that is why we need to be aware of the level of sins, because a lot of the time we look at sin from a very superficial level. And because we do that, and that's one of the weapons that the devil uses to make sure that we are on his side, he allows us to deal with things at a superficial level. But we need to be able to go deep and go really deep so that we can see the subtle ways that the devil uses to manipulate us to collaborate with him in carrying out his evil ways. So, according to a Jesuit priest, his name is John Veltri. He is late now, but he left some fantastic work for us to grow in our spiritual journey. He says that at the first level is the level 1 sins. These are the ones that we're usually aware of, because the things we do or the things we don't do affect others, and we know because of the impact it has had on us and on other people that we have committed sin. So these are the traditional sins of commission and omission. Okay, if I'm supposed to go to mass to build up my spirituality so that I can continue to be Christ-like in my ways, and I don't go, okay, is a sin of omission. If I'm walking on the road and I see somebody and I slap the person, that one is commission. Okay. So at level 2, he says we need to be conscious of the 7 deadly sins, which every one of us knows. Okay. Those tendencies and compulsions that we all have, because these are the ones that give rise to level 1 sins. So, for example, sloth. If I'm inclined or I have the tendency to be lazy, it can prevent me from taking the trouble to develop myself in order to carry out a responsibility that I have been given. So, for example, the AEMP. Sloth can lead me to be negligent in equipping myself to lead other people well. Okay, so it's a tendency, but okay, and by the time I'm negligent in my duties, I'm committing a sin, because my actions, my incompetent actions or my negligent actions have an impact on the spiritual well-being of other people, including myself. Okay, so then we have the level 3 sins. These ones are hidden disordered tendencies. This is what he calls them. He says they are similar to level 2. Okay, but these ones are hidden. Level 2, if somebody is lazy, by the time you've interacted with somebody for some time, you can tell that the person is lazy. In fact, I had a really interesting reflection one day when I was just having a conversation with some people, and I could just, even from the tone of their voices, the way they were speaking and the things they were saying, you could just tell that sloth was at the, they were even dragging their voices and the type of utterances they were making. You could just see that sloth is at the heart of this. Okay, but these level 3 ones, they are often hidden. Okay, people can't see them easily. You, the owner of the problem, you may not see it easily. Other people may also not see this easily. Okay, and that is where prayer becomes very, very important, because when we pray, God reveals things to us that we don't see easily. Okay, so he says that that they don't align with our purpose, because every one of us, God has given each one of us a unique purpose. Okay. And then the level 4 ones, he says, are the original sin that Every single one of us has that sinful nature that lives inside every single one of us. So the level 5 are those corporate and social sins. Those are the ones that, with practices over time, things that have been happening over the years, even maybe before you were born, before your parents that were born and all of that, they become part and parcel of society, part and parcel of our cultures, part and parcel of our families. Okay, families have their own unique social sins. Cultures have their own unique social sins. Nations have their own unique social sins and social structures of sin. Okay, and often, because they have been there for such a long time, they are hidden in the sense that people don't recognize them as sin. Those are the type of things we dismiss and say, that's how we do in Nigeria. Are you not a Nigerian? Those type of things. Okay. So these are the various levels of sins. And they also show up in the things that a society values. So just for an example, okay, one of the things I find really amazing is the fact that Nigeria, we have one of the highest levels of poverty. But when we party, I don't think I have come across another nation where we are so flamboyant and lavish in our celebrations. Even the countries where they are very, very wealthy, they are not as flamboyant and as lavish when they are celebrating. Okay. What society values. Just the same way, again, I find it, I like to watch, to reflect on the things I observe a lot, and I marvel at them. Okay, how somebody who is not, those who don't have money are the ones who want to buy the big cars and the big clothes and the expensive clothes and things like that, because that's what our society, values. I have arrived. I'm driving the biggest car. I'm wearing the most expensive outfit. I'm drinking the most expensive champagne and things like that. That is what our society values, okay? Social sin, okay? And then the places of privilege and oppression we find ourselves in. How men like to dominate women. Some people will say is our culture. Sin, because Christianity does not promote or sanction dominating anybody, whether it is based on gender, whether it's based on age, whether it's based on social income or anything like that. Okay, so these are positions of oppression or places of oppression we find ourselves in, or how the rich oppress the poor, or how people in leadership oppress those that are being led. Social sin, but we take them for granted and the ways of being. And we have brought them from the world, from the secular world, and we have dumped them inside of the church. You can read more about this in the article, which I can share the article with you later. Okay, so what we need to be very, very aware of, and I'm taking the trouble to give this very, very elaborate explanation so that we don't just think that when you're giving guidelines that is because people want to tie your hands and prevent you from doing that which you want to do. That's not the reason. There are
Just a minute, we'll be back shortly. While we are waiting for her to come, please kindly rename your device. There's Ami here. Ami, please rename your device, your first and your last name. Rename your device. Also see Assurance. Assurance, rename your device. Please, everyone, take a look at your name and rename accordingly. First and the last name. By rename, I mean that you should write your first and the last name. Some people's name are trained as iPhone, some are Techno, some just their first names. Okay, so it looks like because the capacity is full, the host is unable to join right now. So any LFM member who is here that can join the YouTube session should please volunteer and join YouTube. Volunteer and join YouTube, please.
I'll leave.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, thank you. Thank you for muting me. Please make me a co-host so that I can share my screen. Sorry about that. I was thrown out. And then I couldn't get in because the session was full. So sorry about that. Okay, so we'll just continue. Okay, so we're just talking about just trying to get us to be aware of the fact that there are many, many things that we do that are sinful. That are sinful. We have to open our eyes to understand them so that we can recognize them. Okay, so whenever we misuse anything, whenever we abuse anything, it is sinful. And God has created everything for a purpose. Every single thing has a purpose. So when we misuse or abuse things, we are committing sin. If an organization has a purpose and then we run the organization in a way that deviates it from its purpose, we are misusing and abusing that organization. We are operating at a parish level and we start to do things that should be done at the deanery or at the association level. It is an abuse and a misuse. In the same way, if things that should be done at the parish are now being done at the deanery and at the association level, it is a misuse and it is an abuse. So we need to be conscious of all of these things and be mindful of the ways that we're contributing to creating social sins and social structures of sins. Because we cannot do all of these things and have the moral justification to point fingers at our leaders when they're doing the wrong things. We have to start inwards and search ourselves in the little areas that God has entrusted us with. How are we governing the way that we should? Okay. Incompetence by itself is not a sin, but incompetence can become a sin if we know we're not competent to function in an area and we deceive people that we can, and then we take the position, and of course we can't do that. We can't do it. It becomes a sin at that point. But if I'm incompetent in an area and I own up that I'm incompetent in that area, at least I can learn and grow. Or at least I can take things in an area where I have competence in. Or if there's no other person to do this type of thing, at least I expose myself to be mentored by those who know. Okay. So, again, another way incompetence can become a sin is, there are some people, they will take up position and then they won't do it well. They will say they can't do it, or they will say that they are very busy. They are not feeling well. That is happening. They are holding the position, one excuse or the other, not to do the work. It becomes sinful at that point. Okay. Or we know we can contribute to the growth of our parish and we refuse to allow ourselves to be used to advance the well-being of the common good and the parish or organizations in the church. That can be sinful. Pride is another way. And then those that deliberately do a work poorly so that others will stop asking them. Okay. So these are various ways that we may not think about, that things we do contribute to a sinful society, a sinful church, a sinful organization, a sinful family, a sinful workplace, and all of that. Okay. So for today, for this session, for this week and next week, we're going to be introducing the newly approved guidelines. And at the same time, we're also going to be introducing practices for cultivating the heart, because the two go hand in hand. We can do guidelines without a converted heart. We can't do guidelines without cultivating our hearts. We can't be leaders without cultivating our hearts, because if we're not cultivating our hearts, then we can't lead other people to cultivate their hearts. So it's very important that we learn these things, we practice them not only for ourselves, but that those that we lead, that we also help them to cultivate their hearts. Because any organization in the church, the primary responsibility that it has is growth in holiness. If somebody belongs to a group, and after 1 year, the person cannot sit back and say, because of my membership in this group, my spirituality has grown, it means that that group has lost focus. It has totally lost focus. And if members of the group, if all what they learn is how to cheat, how to steal, how to gossip, how to bring other people down, and how to plan how they'll bring the downfall of other people. Wow. Wow. We have lost it. We've totally lost it. Because no group in the church should be involved in that. And no person in the church environment should be doing anything like that, because the church is the place where people are supposed to cultivate their hearts so that they can go out into the world and cultivate the hearts of other people. So it's very important that we take all of these exercises very seriously, not only for ourselves, but for those that we lead as well. So we're going to be looking at the Lagos Ad-Diocesan Pastoral Council, which is a new guideline that has been approved. The Finance and Administration Guidelines for Deanery and Ad-Diocesan Organizations. It was previously approved for deanery organizations. It's been expanded to include the Ad-Diocesan organizations as well. And then the Discipline and Restoration Guidelines, the sources and applications of funds. And then we're going to reintroduce the Elections Guidelines because of people in the second term who may not have been exposed to it before. So this is the outline for this week and next week. Okay, so if you have any questions, I will break to take questions before we start on the Ad-Diocesan Pastoral Council. So any questions on the introduction that we have received, any comments, any questions? So if you have any questions or any comments, please put up your hand and one of the co-hosts will, So Bukola has her hand up. Could you unmute Bukola so that she can ask her question or make her comments? And I'll also look at the charts to see if there is anything I should pay attention to. Okay. And the moderator, yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah. My name is Bukola from St. Cyprian Church, Agege. St. Cyprian Catholic Church, Agege. So, as in the aspect of when one is I know that, okay, I can do, as in I'm good in these aspects, and one is doing it. And from there, initially it is not a society on its own. I'm talking about the animators in charge of children in MCA. So when I'm this, and for the virtue that I'm the secretary.
Sorry, Bukola, I'm sorry to cut you short because we don't have a lot of time. We don't have time for stories. If you have a question, ask the question. If you have a comment, make it very briefly. And for people who will be speaking later, you don't need to introduce yourself. Just go straight to the point, just as a way of managing the time that God has given us. We don't have it.
Okay, my question now is that when someone is holding a post, not an elected post, and that is not your society, and you are working in that place, and the parish priest asks you to be in charge of the finance, to be a signatory to the account, and the people that you are working together now said, because you are the secretary, don't be a signatory to the account. But the parish priest says, being the secretary, let the secretary and coordinator be a signatory to the account. So is the person doing, because no, we're talking of sin now, is the person doing what is wrong or right by standing on the parish priest order?
Okay, thank you very much for your question. Unfortunately, we won't be able to answer that question because we don't have sufficient background information. So this is something you can discuss. We'll have to look at too many details to be able to answer that question correctly. So sorry about that. Okay. All right. Okay. So let's hear from Anurika. Okay, and if you have questions, please put them in the chat. Put your questions in the chat. Okay, so for people who are asking for recorded versions, you will get recorded versions through the YouTube link because it's being recorded online as well. And if the moderator on YouTube can also check the YouTube if there are questions from there as well, so that we can carry them along. Okay. Could you please quickly unmute Anurika so that she can ask her question? Yes, Anurika, go ahead.
All right. Good evening. Good evening,
Yes.
everyone. Okay. Good evening, ma'am. Good evening,
Ask your question.
everybody.
Go ahead, ask your question,
Please,
please.
Ask your
my
question.
name is
Ask your
Samuel
question,
Kamochukwu
please.
from St. Peter's, Ejibo. Okay, my question goes like this. Since last week I joined, I've been learning a lot of things, but I now realize it's basically for those that has an executive position in their parishes, how they can lead, even though some guidelines are general. I don't have any post I'm holding. And I'm also straining myself to join anyway because I want to learn. So that's just my question. Is it for those people that that holds position in the church or in any of the societies? Basically, I don't want to be an executive. I just want to learn.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. Okay, so going through the guidelines will at least let you know how the church operates, and it will also teach you governance principles that you can apply in other areas of life. So you don't have to be a leader, but of course, if you are going to be a leader, then you definitely then need to know the guidelines. And the guidelines are applicable in Lagos Archdiocese. So somebody here is asking where is applicable for. Okay. And somebody is asking that the levels of sin you discussed, which of them is the most serious? Is it level 1 or level 5? So the levels of sin is not talking about the gravity at all. It's not talking about the gravity. The gravity is another thing altogether. The purpose of it is just to let us know the different levels of sin that we may not be aware of. There are other things that we used to know about gravity, which we learned in our catechism and all of that. So that's not the purpose of this. So we're going to continue. We're going to continue our discussions. We're going to continue. So every other person, you can put your questions and your comments in the chat. So let us continue now. Okay. Yes. So people who are being kicked out should please join YouTube. They should please join YouTube. The capacity of this meeting is 500. Okay. So we're now going to look at the Archdiocesan Pastoral Council guidelines, which you already received a long time ago and you were asked to study. So what we're now going to do is that we're going to look at it. We're going to go through it, okay, step by step. We're not going to read it. We're just going to review it. And in reviewing it, what you are invited to do is, if you have any question in any area, just put that question in the chat. If you have any comment, put it in the chat. Okay, so we're just going to review it carefully. After that, we're also going to review the finance and administration guidelines as well. Okay, so I think we'll do the finance and administration guidelines tomorrow. Today, we just do the Archdiocesan Pastoral Council guidelines. Okay, so we begin. Okay, so whenever we get to a particular page, if you have any questions or comments, put it in the chat. For those on YouTube, put it in your chat as well. Write them in the write them inside the Google form. Put them in the Google form, and the moderators will let us know where they are. And just as a reminder, for later on when we begin to invite people to ask questions, please do not bother telling us your name. We can see your name. Just go straight and ask the question so that we save time. Okay, so we begin the Archdiocesan Pastoral Council guidelines. So that's the acronym is LAPC. Okay, so we begin with the mission of the Archdiocesan Pastoral Council. Okay, does anybody have any question or any comment on the mission of the Archdiocesan Pastoral Council? If you do, please put it in the chat now. if you have any questions on the functions of the Diocesan Pastoral Council, put it in the chat. You don't have to put up your hand. We're not going to call anybody at this point. All comments, all questions need to go to the chat. So the functions of the Diocesan Pastoral Council, put it in the chat. The consultative role, the representative role. If you have any questions, any comments there, put it in the chat. And then we go to the core pastoral areas for the Diocesan Pastoral Council activities. Okay? So remember that every level has its purpose. Okay? Every council has its purpose. If we misuse, if we abuse, we commit sin. Diocesan pastoral planning, research and investigation, promoting collaboration, mission and evangelization, and then the diocesan guidelines and policies, ensuring their implementation. If you have any questions, any comments, put them in the chat now. And then the core pastoral areas for Diocesan Pastoral Council consultation. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, put them in the chat. Then we go to the composition of the Diocesan Pastoral Committees. This you should be familiar with because it's the same structure we have at the parish level and also at the deanery levels. So the committees that form the pastoral committees of the Diocesan. So look at them. Okay. If you have any questions, any comments, put that in the chat. Then Welfare Social Action Committee, Evangelization Committee. Now, if you have any questions about the membership of Diocesan Pastoral Council, please put that in the chat. Any questions, any comments, any questions or comments about the qualification of the members, put that in the chat. If you have any questions about the officers, the chairman, the vice chairman, secretary, and the assistant secretary, put that in the chat. If you have any questions about the duties of the chairman, the duties of the chairman, of the vice chairman, duties of the secretary, duties of the assistant secretary, and then the duties of the coordinators of the pastoral committees, if you have any questions on that, put that in the chat. If you have any questions about the tenor, the frequency of meetings, the relationships with the Diocesan Finance Council, the relationship with the Diocesan Laity Council, and the relationship with the Diocesan Pastoral Committees, and the relationship with the Diocesan Lay Apostolate Bodies. So by the lay apostolate bodies, we mean bodies like the Diocesan Catholic Men's Organization, Diocesan Catholic Women's Organizations, all those organizations that are at the diocesan level. So if you have any questions about any of this, put them in the chat. Okay, so that would be it. So that is the review. We're just going to look at the chat and look at the questions. Somebody says they didn't see the Catholic sisterhood in Christ in the different categorizations. If they are meant to be there, if they are an approved body, if they have been approved, then based on their charisma. So the thing with these pastoral committees is that they are based on the charismas of the group. Okay, so even if the group is not there, then based on the charisma, if they have been approved, you automatically know where you should belong. Okay. Okay, the duties of the assistant secretary, they are stated there. What role do Christian in implementing pastoral guidelines? They belong to a pastoral committee. Is this a refresher course or is there anything new in the Diocesan guidelines? So the Diocesan Pastoral Council guidelines is a newly approved guidelines. We have never done it before. So we're doing it for the first time. So it's a new one. So this is not a refresher on this. Okay. So that is it. So that is it on the review of the Agda-Sisen Pastoral Council guidelines. So I think we have time. We have sufficient time to actually, I wanted us to do the finance. Let's leave the finance and administration to tomorrow as I planned. Okay, so now let's go to an exercise. Okay, so we're going to have time to look at those questions. We'll also look at the questions that would have come from the YouTube participants as well. There's going to be time for that. So right now, I'm inviting everybody here to bring a sheet of, if you don't have, make sure you have writing material. So we're going to take a 3-minute break, and the purpose of that 3-minute break is for you to go and use the bathroom if you need to, drink water, and then make sure you have writing materials when you come back. So we're going to reconvene at exactly 2020. So when you come back, make sure you have your writing materials, paper and pen, or if you want to write on the notepad on your phone, have it handy. Okay, and also there were some documents that were given to you originally, the NVC process and the feelings inventory and the needs inventory. So also have those handy. So see you at 2020. Sure you don't leave, because if you leave the Zoom session, you're okay. See you soon.
Yes, no volume because we're on 3 minutes break. Just a minute to go. We'll be back here by 2020.
Welcome back. Okay. So what we're going to do now is to begin the process of, or continue, because I'm sure many of us are already cultivating our hearts. But what we're doing today is introducing a way of listening to the heart, listening to the heart. So one of the things that I discovered, so I'm a psychotherapist by training, and I'm also a spiritual care practitioner and a spiritual director. So one of the things that I have come to understand is that many of the things that we do that we shouldn't do happen because we're disconnected from our hearts. We're disconnected from our hearts. And I have had time to reflect very deeply about certain things that I did in the past. And, there are certain things we've done that we can sit back and ask, you sit back and you ask yourself, how did I do that? What was I thinking when I did that? Okay, and the truth of the matter is that, just as St. Augustine said, every single one of us is capable of the most atrocious sin if it were not for the grace of God. And when we do these things when we're disconnected from our hearts. And we're disconnected from our hearts when we don't know what is happening inside of our hearts. So what we're about to learn this evening is a way to help us to listen to what is happening in our hearts, so that we choose our actions, we choose our decisions, and we don't just act impulsively. We begin the journey of not acting from a place of superficiality and a place of recklessness, a place of thoughtlessness, but from a place of deep awareness. Okay, so one of the tools that is very, very useful for doing this is something called the non-violent communication process. Some of you might already be aware of it, but it's a very good tool for beginning that process. So I'm going to introduce us to that tool, and then we're going to have a chance to practice using it. And it's particularly important because when we are taking decisions that impact not only ourselves but other people, we need to do it from a place of deep thought and a deep connection with our hearts. Okay, not just our minds, but our hearts. A lot of us are connected with our minds, but we're not connected with our hearts. And we make the wisest decisions when we're connected with both our minds and our hearts. Okay, I have met a lot of intelligent people who make decisions and I look at them and I'm like, is this real? Is this person really going to do this? But the simple reason is we can be extremely intelligent, but when we're not connected with our hearts, we make unwise decisions. Okay? So it's very important that we cultivate our hearts and that we make decisions that come from both our hearts and our minds. Not just from our hearts. When we make decisions only from the heart, we also don't make wise decisions. We need to be able to connect with both the mind and the heart, and then we can make wise decisions. Okay. So we begin with the NVC process. If you can see the handout on the NVC process, the one that says how you can use the NVC process, please give me a thumbs up if that's what you're seeing on the screen. If you're still seeing if you're seeing the NVC, give me a thumbs up. Okay, so nobody's giving me a thumbs up. It doesn't mean you're still seeing the PowerPoint slide. If you're seeing the PowerPoint slide, Martina,
no,
give me a thumbs up.
No, the NVC is on. We can see the
NVC is off.
Okay, so okay, thank you very much. Why did it take you guys such a long time to put up your hands?
No, but the hands were
All
off.
right, thank you.
They were doing thumbs up. The hands were off, actually.
Okay, I didn't see. It's just now that I'm seeing the hands up. Thank you. Okay, so the first thing, okay, and this comes in handy whenever you have a strong emotion, when you feel yourself having a strong emotion, whether it's an emotion like joy, you just feel this ecstatic joy, or whether it is anger or sadness or any movement at all, you just see that your mood has changed. It is time for you to use the NVC to process what is happening. Okay? Because what is happening is that your heart is speaking to you, and you need to be able to listen to what your heart is saying to you. So whenever there's a strong emotion or a strong movement in your spirit, pay attention and listen to what is happening. So this is how you listen. Okay. So the first thing is you need to go through the step of observation. What is it that you observed that led to that movement of the heart? What is it that you observed that led to that strong emotion that you had? And you need to be able to describe what you observed using any of your external or internal senses. And you need to be able to describe it using only one sentence. And you begin by saying, when I, and you have to use I. You're not going to say when she or when he. You're not complaining about what somebody did. You have to take ownership of what you observed. So even if it's somebody who said something to you, the observation is, when I heard Matthew say, okay? Or if somebody comes and slaps you, when I felt his hand on my cheeks. So we always have to take ownership by using I. And when we describe, whatever we're describing has to be something we are able to use. We have to be able to use one of the senses, either one of the external senses or one of the internal senses. External senses like when I saw, when I smelt, when I tasted, when I touched, or what's the fifth one? I'm running out. Or when I heard. Okay, those are the 5 external senses. And then the internal senses like when I thought, thinking, or when I remembered, or when I imagined. So it has to be one of the internal or external senses. And one of the mistakes we can make at that first step is when we start to use evaluative words. That somebody can say, when she insulted me, or when I was insulted. No, you haven't described an observation. It has to be one of the internal or external senses. Okay, it has to describe one of the internal or external senses. So you have to be very careful not to use evaluative words or conclusions. Okay, so one of the mistakes we make often is we say, oh, somebody disrespected me. No, nobody disrespected you. Somebody said something that didn't meet your needs for respect. The person did not disrespect you. Okay, and we have to be able to make these distinctions if we're going to be able to listen to our hearts and listen to our hearts correctly. Because when we say somebody disrespected us, very often we have deviated from the truth. Because very likely it wasn't the person's intention to disrespect you. Rather, something the person said did not meet your need to be respected. That's closer to the truth. Okay? So we need to listen to our hearts. So after we have described the observation, then we need to be able to get in touch with our feelings. A lot of us are disconnected with our feelings. There are many people, when you ask them what they are feeling, they won't be able to describe what they are feeling. Some people won't even be able to, they don't even know. They'll tell you that I'm not feeling anything. Sometimes you see somebody, the person's facial expression shows that they are angry. Yes, no, you look angry. Why are you angry? I'm not angry. Even their tone of voice that they're using to tell you that they're not angry sounds angry. You know, initially I used to think that they were lying, but with my profession, I then realized that no, they are not lying. They really believe that they are not angry. And that's because they are so disconnected from their feelings that they don't even know when they are angry. But we can relearn all of these things. And the way to relearn it is to go through the feelings inventory very carefully and really listen to your heart and find the right words that describe what it is that you could be feeling that you're not even feeling. For those who are not feeling. For those who are feeling, you can go through the inventory to get in touch with the words to describe what it is you're feeling. Because one of the things that we have found is that when people are able to articulate what they're feeling, it helps to regulate their emotions. Okay, so it's important that we're able to name what we are feeling. And a lot of the time, when our emotions are evoked, we tend to feel so many different things at the same time. So that's why it's good for you to go through the entire list and be sure that you're exhaustive in naming what it is that you're feeling. So that is the second step. And then you move to the third step. And what we need to know is that our feelings are always telling us about a need that we have that has either been met or not met. So that is why it's not correct to say that somebody disrespected you. No, the person did something that did not meet your need for respect. It was not the person's intention to disrespect you, because we can't really talk about other people's intentions because we're not in their hearts. We can't read their hearts. We can only read our own hearts. Okay. We will see later that we can try to empathize with other people. We can try to imagine what they need, but we can never be sure. And so even when we do that, we need to be aware that we are only trying. And so we always need to check in with them to confirm whether what we are thinking is correct. Okay, we can only be sure of what is happening in our own hearts. Okay, so knowing that each feeling that we have is giving us information about a need that we have that has either been met or not met. When we go to the third step, we then take each of these feelings and we try to figure out what need of ours has not been met or that has been met. And I'll give you an example. Because I love flowers, I love colorful, the really, really bright colored and different colors of flowers. So whenever I pass a place and I see flowers, I feel, there's an elation that I feel in my heart. I feel inspired. I feel elated. I feel joyful. I have all kinds of warm feelings because my need for beauty, my need for inspiration is met by that. Okay. So in the same way, when I read about injustices carried out by leaders, I feel upset. My soul is troubled. Okay. Because my need for justice, my need for competence, my need for well-being, my need for flourishing for other people and myself isn't met by that. So our feelings are always tied to needs that we have. And what you will start to notice when you start to do this is, so whenever we talk about needs, needs can stand for needs itself. It can stand for desires, things we desire. It can also stand for values that we have. And it can also stand for expectations and hopes that we have. So whenever you think needs, desires, hopes, expectations, and what else is that? And values. Okay. And when you start to do this exercise, you notice that you might start to notice that a lot of the time that most of your emotions are tied with maybe 1 or 2 or 3 needs and desires, that they keep coming up. When that happens, it tells you that these are your core values and your core desires. So it's like it's getting to the core of your heart, because God has implanted different values and different core desires in the hearts of each one of us. Okay, it differs for different people. So you might start reading what it is God has really planted deep in your heart, and when you start to read that, it also starts to give you indications of the purpose that God has for you, okay, in this life. Okay, so that's why it's so important that we cultivate listening to our hearts. Okay, and then the last step, so I forgot to mention that this particular nonviolent communication process was developed by a clinical psychologist called Marshall Rosenberg. He wrote a book, Nonviolent Communication, and I would really invite you to take time and read this book. It's I think copies of it are available for free online too, so you can always Google and find free copies and read. Okay, so the last step is, as a result of what you observed, what would you have preferred to have observed instead of what you observed? Okay, so because he developed this process within the context of communication, he calls this 4th step request. I personally prefer the word preference. Okay, because when you're listening to your heart, you don't have to request anything from anybody. Okay, but you can listen to your heart to know what your heart preferred to have seen differently. So if, for example, I'm walking on the road and somebody sees me and the person says, "Look at her, mumu," or something, okay, and I'm upset, I'm angry, because my need for respect and my need for peace. I was walking, I was enjoying my peace and my peaceful walking. Not only did this person disrupt that peace, which I value, but the person also said something that I found disrespectful. It didn't meet my need for respect. Okay, so my preference is that the person just walked past me and either said something pleasant or kept quiet. So that's my preference. Okay, so this is where you come up with what you would have preferred, what your heart would have preferred and what you would have preferred. And if you're in conversation with somebody, that is when a request, and if it's a request, you're asking the person, would you be willing to? Would you be willing to? And one of the things about speaking compassionately, and another word for nonviolent communication is compassionate. Okay, so this is one of the reasons why we're introducing it, because remember that, God himself invites us to be compassionate, just as he is compassionate. So this is a tool that helps us to listen to our hearts so that we can be compassionate to ourselves. And when we're compassionate to ourselves, we create room to empathize and compassionate with other people. Okay, and that's one of the interesting things that I found. Okay, so remember that we have, I think it's in Matthew where it tells us, love your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. Okay, so if you don't love yourself by listening to your heart, by being compassionate to your heart, it's very difficult for you to love the other person. It's very difficult for you to empathize with the other person. Okay, and I find this happening all the time. Okay, whenever I'm really upset with somebody, okay, by the time I finish doing the NVC for myself, I suddenly start to make room for, oh, maybe this person just had a bad day. Maybe this person, before I do it for myself, I will still be raking and angry and everything. Okay, so until I've shown love to myself by listening to what my heart needs, it's difficult for me to show love to somebody else by empathizing with the other person. And that is why many people that find it difficult to love and to love other people and to show love to other people is because they do not know how to love themselves. Okay, very important. Okay, so when it comes to, so what we're now going to do, now that I've introduced this, I'm going to invite you to open up the feelings inventory as well as the needs inventory. And we're going to go through an exercise together. Okay, because it's going to be difficult for me to be moving from one sheet to the other. So that's why it will be better if you open yours. I'm going to open mine, but I would like you to open yours so that you have it right in front of you and it's handy for you to use. Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to practice. We're going to practice.
They're
Okay?
asking if they can be posted. They don't have access to the document.
Okay, so if you say you don't have access to the documents, you have just exposed yourself because you were supposed to do some exercises before coming to this session. So one of the Stella and the other CEOs can post them to their platforms. You can post the documents to the platforms, both the Telegram's platform, the WhatsApp platform, and those that are on YouTube. Whoever is moderating on YouTube can also post the links to them on YouTube. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do, if you have your writing materials handy, just checking the time. Okay, if you have your writing materials handy, is to reflect back on the past 24 hours and see if there was a time when you had a strong emotion, and then focus on that time. If you didn't have any strong emotions in the last 24 hours, then think back to the most recent time you had a strong emotion about anything. It doesn't have to be about the guidelines, about anything at all. Okay? And once you have connected with that event or situation, please put up your hand so that I know that we have done that step, and that means we can move to the second step. Once you can remember and you have recollected a situation where you had a strong emotion, put up your hand. And as soon as we have a reasonable number of hands up, we'll move to the next step. I can see your hands up: Jumoke, Mercy, Obiageli, Emmanuel. Okay, so I can see 16, 17, 18, 20, 22. Okay, we're moving. Let's get to at least 150 because we're 500 people in this room. So we should have a reasonable number of hands up. We're on 40 now. We're on 41, 43. Okay, it's moving up. It's moving up. 46. And it's been stable at 46. Why is it being stable? Okay, it's gone to 48. Let's get to 100 quickly. Let's quickly get to 100 so that we can move to the next step. And I hope the people on YouTube are following what we're doing. Recall a situation where you had a very strong emotion, the most recent situation, whether it was in the past 24 hours, in the last week, strong emotion, and remember it. Okay, and for those who have remembered that event, try and write it using the first step. That's the observation. Was it someone that says something to you? If that was if that's the case, then you write, when I heard, and then the person's name. If what upset you was what you saw, then you say, when I saw. If what upset you was something you remembered, right? When I remembered. Or if it was something you imagined, when I imagined. Okay, so that's your STEM, and then write whatever it is. Remember not to use any evaluative word. Just write what you heard, write what you saw, write what you remembered, write what you imagined, write what you smelt, if that's the case, write what you saw, heard, smelt, said, or touched, remembered, imagined, or thought. Just write it. That's the observation. Okay. So we have just about 50 people that are raising their hands up now. So I hope that the rest of the people are engaging with this process. So one of the mistakes I would encourage you not to make is to say, I will do it later. Do it now. Drop whatever you're doing and do it now. Okay. That is a good use of your time. Because if you don't do it now, you're going to waste an additional time some other time to do it. But if you do it now, the learning happens. You have made good use of the time, of this time that you are here, to learn what you're supposed to learn. And subsequently, you will now be using the time to apply it to situations. So don't waste this precious time that you have by delaying doing this exercise now. Pick up your paper, pick up your pen, pick up your notepad on your phone or your writing material on your laptop, and engage in this exercise now. Okay, so go ahead and write the observation. When I saw, when I heard, when I tasted, when I smelt, when I touched, when I heard, when I thought, when I listened, when I imagined, when I remembered, whatever it is, and then write what it is. Now, the next step is to identify and name the feelings that you had as a result of this observation. So I'm going to go to my feelings inventory. I'm going to go to my feelings inventory. Okay, hopefully you're seeing my feelings inventory. Martin, are you seeing my feelings inventory?
Yes, please.
Okay. So if you're seeing my feelings inventory, so what I would invite you to do is to just focus on the boldened words. So when you had this observation, whatever it was, did it make you feel affectionate? Did it make you feel engaged? Did it make you feel hopeful? Did it make you feel confident? Did it make you feel excited, grateful, inspired, joyful, exhilarated, peaceful, or refreshed? Just pick only the boldened words that apply. If it doesn't apply, don't write it, don't pick it. And when you're writing, write it in the form of a list. Just write the list. Okay. Now, I know that people have different ways of thinking. I'm more of a big picture thinking. So what I have just described might work for people like me. But there are people that are detail oriented. They may not be able to know whether they felt confident. But when they look at the smaller words under confident, like empowered, open, proud, safe, secure, then they're able to say, yeah, that's what I felt. I felt secure. Okay, or I felt safe, or I felt proud, or I felt open. Okay, so for such people, you can also go through the smaller words under the bigger words, if it helps you to identify what you felt. Okay, of course, you will be concentrating on this list if it was if the feeling you had is a feeling associated with your needs being met. That is the ones we call the positive feelings. Okay, and whenever I say positive in inverted commas, because feelings are neutral. There's no feeling that is positive or negative. Every feeling is neutral. It is what we do with the feeling that has a positive or negative consequence, because feelings are gifts from God. They were given to us by God as a source of giving us information about what is happening in our hearts. So they are neutral. They are neutral. They are gifts from God. Okay. So if your needs were not met, then you can go to the second list, which you have on the second page. So when you had this observation, did you feel afraid? Did you feel annoyed? Did you feel angry? Did you feel aversion? Did you feel confused, disconnected, disquieted, sad, pain, fatigue, embarrassed, tense, vulnerable, yearning? Okay. And one of the things that I notice with many human persons, many of us, and I'm one of those people as well, is that we are often ashamed of admitting that we're having any feelings in this category. And that's because one of the social sins, level 5 sins, we were socialized to believe that if we feel angry, it means we're bad. That is one of those level sins that we all inherited, to believe that certain feelings are bad. And because we think they are bad, we shy away from admitting when we have them. Now, that is one of the false beliefs that we need to get rid of. And part of cultivating the heart is identifying beliefs that are false so that we can get rid of them. That's part of, I think last week we had the parables of the sower, the parable, and we had the interpretation that Jesus gave about the different conditions of the heart. So some of the things that entangle our hearts are false beliefs. And when we identify them, we get rid of them. So one of the false beliefs we have been socialized is that having negative or having this type of feelings makes us bad people, or that is bad to have this type of feelings. That's not true. Feelings are gifts from God. All feelings. They are there to make us aware of what is going on in our hearts. They are there to make us aware of needs and desires that we have, so that we can take steps to meet them in healthy ways. When we're not aware, or when we don't acknowledge what is happening inside of us, they manifest in ways that are not helpful. So many people that have addictions, many people that have anger problems, many people that have one vice or the other, even including people that are addicted to things like pornography, sex, and things like that, they are disconnected from their hearts, and they are disconnected from their hearts and their feelings and their emotions, partly because they were socialized to believe that it is not good to have these feelings. So when they have these feelings, they suppress them, they repress them. And when we repress feelings and emotions, they show up in ways that are not okay. They show up in all of these vices that cause problems, not only for the individuals, but for their loved ones, their associates, and society at large. So one of the false beliefs we need to get rid of is the belief that certain feelings are bad, or that owning up to some feelings makes us bad people. That is not true. Okay, so identify all of the feelings that you have and write them down as a list. And if you're done, I would like you to put up your hands so that when we have a reasonable number, we can go to the next step. And if you're not done and you have your hand up, please put it down so that the numbers don't deceive me. We have 37 hands up now. When we get to 50, I will move to the next step, so please. So this step now is to list all the feelings that you have associated with that observation that you collected earlier. So I notice somebody has a logo that has TDS, and it's making me smile because my company is also tedious. Delivering the promise of technology. Okay. So we have 50 people now. Okay. So you have listed. So even if you don't list everything, if it's only one or two feelings that you've identified, that's okay. We're practicing. So work with those two. So what we're going to do now is we're going to ask you to now try and get in touch with the needs that these feelings are telling you that you had that was either met or not met. Okay. What are the feelings? Okay. And there are two ways to do this. I found that some people can match. Some people can take a feeling and look through the list of needs and be able to say, I felt angry. And the reason I felt angry was because my need for connection was not met. My need for cooperation, my need for communication, my need for closeness was not met. Some people can do that. And if you can do that, then I invite you to take each of these feelings and try and identify the need that you had that was not met. Remembering that need can be value. So it can be something you value. So for example, I value respect. And so when somebody said this particular word to me, I felt angry. My need for respect, or my desire to be respected, or my value for respect was not met. Okay, so do the matching. So in front of the feeling words, write the particular need or desire or expectation or hope that was met or not met. Okay. So that's one way some people can do it. Some other people find that it's difficult for them to do the matching. So rather than doing the matching, you can just prayerfully look at the entire list and see if you can connect with the needs or the desires or the hopes or the expectations or the values that you had that were not met by the observation. So in that case, you're just writing a list of needs. You're not necessarily matching. So if that is what works better for you, you can also do it that way. Okay. So I would invite everyone who has their hand up to put their hands down, because I want, when I ask if you've completed it, I want it to be fresh hands that are coming up at that point. So put your hands down now so we can get a real statistic. So what you're doing now is you're trying to identify the needs, the values, the expectations, the desires, or the hopes that you had that were not met by the observation that you identified earlier. Okay, so everybody put down your hands, and then I'm going to give you a few minutes to complete the exercise, and then I'm going to ask you if you've completed it. So right now, just put down your hands. Okay. And I would really encourage everybody to work on this exercise. Okay. This is a good stewardship of your time. If you're already here, be fully here. So I'll give us one more minute. Once it's 9 p.m., then I'm going to check in with you at 9 p.m. just so that we're done today. Tomorrow is another day, but let's be done with today's. Okay, so if you're done, you can raise your hands now. Okay, so it's 9 o'clock, and we're assuming that you're done. Okay, so the last step, which we're not going to do today, the last step is where you then think of that observation and you describe what you would have preferred the person did differently. You can put it in the form of a statement. I would have preferred if so and so did this, blah, 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 blah. Or if I saw blah, 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 blah. Okay. Or you can put it in the form of a question that you're asking the person directly. Would you be willing to blah, 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 blah. So that's the fourth stage. So we're going to stop now. So this is the exercise. This is a way that we listen to our hearts. This is how we listen to our hearts. Okay, we listen to what is happening in our hearts. And you notice that for those who did this, you notice that you're feeling lighter. Okay, if you're feeling lighter, okay, just that everybody's hand is up, I wanted to say, if you're feeling lighter, you can write in the chat whether you're feeling lighter. For those who completed the exercise, if you notice that you're feeling lighter, you're not as angry as you were before. Okay, you're having more clarity. You're feeling, it's as if you're not feeling as bad. If it was something that made you feel bad, you can put it in the chat. Okay, so we're going to continue now. We're going to continue with the session, and the next thing we're going to look at now. So I just wanted the practice was for us to listen to our hearts. So we've listened to our hearts. We've done the practice. We have completed the practice. We're not going to have the group exercise. I wanted us to go into group and share what we came up with. Rather, I'm going to ask us to share in the session. So anybody who wants to share, anybody who wants to share can begin by, first of all, sharing in the chat. Okay, share whatever you feel comfortable sharing in the chat, and then we're just going to invite one person to share out loud. That's somebody who feels that they did what they were meant to do, to share what they did, just so that everybody has an idea of what it's like. I'm trying to share I'm not sure why I can't. I'm trying to share my screen. Okay. So let's call one person. So everybody write in the chat. So when I write your observation, write your feelings, write the needs that you came up with, and if you can, also write your request. Anybody who wants to share. If you don't feel comfortable sharing, you don't have to share. I mean, some of these things can be really personal, right? And you want to keep it to yourself. It's okay to keep it to yourself. But if it's something you feel able and willing to share, please put it in the chat, and then we just call one person to share out loud. So I'm going to call one person to share out loud. Let's hear from Yetunde. Yetunde, are you willing to share? Okay, so you can all put down your old hands, so that the only hands we have now are hands of those who want to share. Yetunde, if you're willing to share, you can unmute Yetunde so that she can share. If you're not willing to share, please put down your hand so that we don't call you when you're not willing to share. Okay, so let's hear from Tunde, and then I'll look at the chat and see what other people too have shared. Okay, we saw a lot of people saying that they felt lighter. Yeah, so this is the beautiful thing about this. Okay, you will just notice that once you finish processing, you're feeling lighter. Even if all you do is to name what you're feeling, you just notice that you're feeling lighter. So I really encourage us to practice this all of the time. And if you practice this at least once every day, over a period of time, you just see that it's coming automatically. At the initial stage, you find that you need to use the inventories, you need to use the process and all of that. But if you do it consistently every day, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maximum 1 month, you notice that it's coming naturally. And when you notice that happening, what is really happening is that you're increasing your connection to your heart. And you find out that you're going to be a happier person, a lighter person, you'll be sleeping better, you'll be getting along better with other people. So many changes will happen in your life. So I really encourage you to practice this on a daily basis. So are we having a Yetunde?
Franklin, I know Franklin is not there. Franklin's hand is up and he has unmuted.
Okay, Franklin, go ahead then.
Yeah, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So I thought that this exercise is really productive. So something happened actually yesterday between...
Don't tell us the story. Just read out what you wrote. When I felt I needed a hair. Excellent.
Okay. Yes. So I said when I imagined that I am being ignored. when I imagine that my calls are being ignored, I felt annoyed. I felt displeased. I felt angry. I felt my need to be respected was not met. And I felt angry.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the steps.
Okay, so you felt angry because
Yeah.
your need for respect was not met. And I like something you did, that you used the word when I thought that I was being ignored. Okay.
Yeah.
And you notice the difference that makes, because the mistake we make, we say, when I was ignored. When I was ignored doesn't give the benefit of a doubt. But when I say, when I thought I was being ignored, it gives me the opportunity to recognize that I might be thinking wrongly.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that is my thoughts. And that we start to see the connection between my thoughts and my feelings.
Mhm.
So if instead I say, when I thought that the person might be busy, notice that your feelings will change.
Yes, yes. And that was actually what happened, because as we're having the call, she now called. She just called me to say, oh, her phone was on 2%, so she was even not getting the call. You
Yeah.
know, so I would have made that, how do I call it, played the devil's advocate to think that, what about if this had happened?
Yes.
What about if she's not with her phone? What about? Yes.
Exactly. And when we start making the connection between our thoughts and our feelings, then we begin to recognize that we also have control over our feelings. Because if I then choose a different thought, then my feeling will change.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
those are the ways that we regulate our emotions as mature and responsible adults.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so much
much.
for sharing that. Thank you for
All
sharing
right.
that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And I saw some people also shared what they thought and all of that. So this is an exercise that I would really encourage all of us to practice every single day. Practice it every single day. Okay. So what we're going to do now is just a reminder. So this is just a reminder on nurturing a humble heart. Okay. So for those who have done strengths and gifts discernment, okay, remember that these are some of the things that, because sometimes, okay, so one of the interesting things that this type of exercise can do for us is that it can get us in touch with the desire that we have. Because if we're in touch with our hearts, we need to be honest with ourselves. So sometimes you might realize that, oh, the reason I'm angry is because I felt angry because my need for respect was not met. Okay. And respect is the same as esteem, right? And we recognize that the desire for being esteemed is a selfish desire. And that the path to holiness invites us as a prayer that Christ frees us from these selfish desires. So from the desire to be respected, deliver me, O Jesus. Okay. So this is the connection with nurturing the heart. Because we can even notice that, oh, the reason I was angry is because my need to be recognized. They didn't recognize me. I'm a big man. Okay. So a priest was telling me how one day they were at an event and they called a man to the high table. He refused to stand up. After they called him 3 or 4 times and he was sitting there, somebody went to him that, they've been calling you now. He said it wasn't him that they were calling. Why did he say it wasn't him that they were calling? They didn't add chief. They said Mr. Okay. The desire to be extolled, honored, praised, preferred to others, esteemed, selfish desires. Okay. So when we are in touch with our hearts, then it's easier for us to name what is in our heart. Because in all our hearts, because of original sin, because of the social sin, the culture, the sinful parts of the culture. In every culture, there are good and bad parts. In every human heart, there are good and bad parts. Okay. Because of all of this, our hearts nurture good and bad. But if we're not in touch with the ones that are bad, we'll go and take decisions based on the ones that are selfish. We based on the ones that are bad. Okay. Do you see the connection with being in touch with our hearts? I hope we're all seeing it. Okay. And sometimes we're afraid, again, the fears that are unhealthy. And then it's inviting us to act based on selfless desires. Okay. So just for us to be aware of this connection. So we just now quickly go to the questions and answers based on the guidelines. So we're now going to go back to the chat, and the moderator is going to read out the questions from the Diocese and Pastoral Council guidelines so that we can quickly answer them before we call it a day. So if we quickly answer them and we have a bit more time, we can talk more about listening to our hearts. So any questions? Who is moderating? Who is moderating? Please go to the chats, the earlier questions that were asked, if there are any questions that we need to answer from there. I will also just